Association of College Admission. In addition to that, I am an admission counselor at Lynn University. So we are excited here today to just be able to collaborate with a lot of fun, important topics. So I'll turn it back over to Iris so she can discuss the agenda.
Thank you, Rose. The last 2 days, we've had a great, we had a few great sessions with legislative senators and Title IX coordinators. So allow me to take this time to, thank them, thank all of our panelists so far. Today's session, we're really excited about. It's about financial aid. It's a financial aid presentation, a hot topic, right? Year round. Before we get started, I want to make sure that introducing our speakers, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. We will be using the Q&A feature to direct questions to our speakers. We will also be sending a survey to all of our guests before we conclude today's session. And we would really appreciate any feedback that you may have to help improve our programming for next year. So be on the lookout for that. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to my colleague Rose, who will introduce our first speaker for today. Rose?
Thank you, Iris. I'm excited to introduce my colleague Tiziana Marchante. She's the project coordinator for educational content and policy at NACAC. She has worked at a variety of educational institutions, including roles in financial aid and campus strategic projects at Florida Gulf Coast University and the Collier County School District, most recently Florida Southwestern State College. Her area of focus at NACAC ranges from policy analysis, members, educational content development to global initiatives. So thank you, Tiziana, for being here today. And I'll go ahead and turn it to Iris for the rest of our speakers.
Thank you. So we will also have, hopefully joining us today, Mr. Pedro Hernandez, who's the Florida Department of Education's Director of Outreach Services. If you're from Florida, you may receive a lot of his emails with resources and tools for counselors and our students. And lastly, we will have Aaron Johnson, founder and chairman of the Aaron Johnson Scholarship, along with his team to talk about a little bit about what the work that they do with their scholarship. But now let's go ahead and, let's get started. Tiziana, the floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Tiziana Marchante. All right, so I am actually reporting from Northern Virginia, where it is very cold and snowy at the moment, and all the kids are at home and having fun. So I apologize if you hear a bunch of noise in the background, including the dog. But I totally appreciate the fact that, the people are taking time out of their work life just to devote to advocacy. So having volunteered myself with PTA, community foundations in the area where I used to live in Florida, I know so much sacrifice is being made. And so a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Another special thank you is to Rose and Iris, because, this is putting all together an information that is very important. Everything starts at the state level, local, state, and then go to the federal. So having this being taken to consideration is very important. So as you get into advocacy, you're going to get surrounded, and I was part of that, surrounded by a lot of numbers, jargon, legislative process, and a bunch of other things. But the most important thing that you have to know is to remember in all of this is that you are the practitioner. You're the expert of what you do. And that is what is so important when it comes to advocacy. You are able to articulate the challenges that you and the students face each day in a single most important thing you can do. So being able to thank legislators, get active on your local area, and being able to, thank the legislators that are actually getting it and able to support is very important. So I guess I'm going to be sharing my screen. So just a second. All right, so here we go. So here, here in NACAC, so the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, is policy priorities that we have. So one of the main one, of course, is to improve equity in education, particularly access to college preparatory curriculum. And one of the press release, I forgot an A in there. Apologize for that. There's a press release that just came out, and I wanted to share that with you. It's we have, and I apologize for the little change here. We just announced today, after a month-long project funded by the Lumina Foundation, NACAC, in collaboration with the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, so NASFA, many of you might be aware of that, is providing a report. And this report, I will be sharing the link in the chat later on, seeking to reimagine the college admission and financial aid through a racial equity lens. So the report recommends a series of actions for admissions and financial aid practitioners, educational institutions, federal, state agencies, and policymakers. So I'm going to send you this on the chat, and I apologize, I had to stop the sharing because I cannot do too many things at the same time. So let me send this to you. This is a very important project and report that came out, something that we're trying to reevaluate. How do we see financial aid from the perspective of equity? Meaning that making sure that financial aid is available to everybody, and take into consideration every single sense of the equity lens. So we also try to push the increase of funding to hire, train, and equip school counselors and college advisors. We support for need-based financial aid for college, including undocumented students, right? One of the main things that is happening in the Hill right now is they're working with the budget reconciliations, right? They are trying to do a negotiation of regulations to make sure that everybody is on board and everybody is understanding that one point that they put into the negotiation is to have financial aid for Daca students. This is a big thing. As you may know, DACA students are not able to receive financial aid. When they submit a financial aid application, they only have to put 000s for the social security number, and is up to the institutional funding at that point. So having the expansion of financial aid to DACA student, it is a big one. And so we are monitoring this and we're trying to support this as much as possible. Protect students from predatory recruitment and lending practices. So, you know, there have been many institutions out there that have had given loans to students and then eventually ended up shutting their doors, right? So all of that is also to protect their students on making sure that they have the possibility of attending institutions that are, you know, legitimate in a way. So that's another thing that we're trying to protect. Now, college access in Florida. So this is more some facts that I'm just going to share with you. The college going rates for recent high school graduate, and this is only the 2018, that's only what is out there right now, 64.5% versus 63.7% nationally. Public high school graduation rate is from 2016 is 83.3% versus 85% nationally. So pretty good, keeping up with the national ranking. Percentage of percent of 18 to 24 years old enrolled in college is at 34.5%, and we are ranking 30th nationally. So in general, why need-based? As an equity measure, scarce taxpayer funding should be targeted as those who need it the most. This is what need-based is. Research shows that financial barriers constitute the highest barriers to both access and retention, completion. So when it comes to an institution, this is a very, very hot topic. For enrollment counselors to the retention, this is what there's always a struggle, making sure that the students are able to have these roadblocks of financial aid taken away to become and stay consistent into the retention part of the program. If we are to achieve progress toward our educational, economic, and societal goals to offer more opportunity, it is the population of low-income students where we must focus our effort. So this is why we have a need-based. Now, from a federal, Pell and Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, so FSEOG, direct lending and income-driven repayment and Fafsa simplification are all at the top of the reconciliation at the moment. It's being talked about during the fiscal year 2022. And as you know, the repayment has been pushed to May 1st, 2022 for borrowers due to COVID and the pandemic. And the FAFSA simplification, currently the Department of Education has implemented phases to implement the FAFSA simplification. So what it means is that they're reducing the number of questions that the FAFSA will have there will be only 30 questions at the moment, 30 questions going forward. They've reduced some of the verification questions. They removed the drug conviction, the service for military service, selective service, that's the word I was looking for. And that's the first one that they implemented for 2021. They're going further with several phases later on to actually fully implement the simplification to have guidance for financial aid administrators. From a state point of view, so we have here a little snapshot that I found that is very important to have sometimes. It shows you what Florida offers to a state level. So we have the Bright Future Scholarship that has been debated last year a lot with the SAT increase. The FSAG, which is purely grant need for those that are in the most need. Financial administrators will give that in addition to their Pell Grant. And the Florida Bright Future Scholarship Program as well, the FMS. So these are all the information currently at the Florida level for state programs. And then you can see that the Florida policy citation. So if you want to dig deeper a little bit on the policy itself, go ahead. This is very interesting. This is just another information that I wanted to share with you. The median household, Florida household income is $59,000, with the U.S. median being $65,712. Now, the Pell Grant, currently, Florida is the third highest state receiving Pell Grant. We have about 483,000 students in Florida receiving the Pell Grant. That was from 1920, so we don't have the current numbers, obviously. And a total of $2 trillion in total of Pell Grants. So another thing that the budget reconciliation is asking for 2022 is the expansion of the Pell. They're asking for 7.6 billion increase of Pell Grant. So hopefully that will go through as well. And then direct loans in 2021, Florida was the third highest. So third highest, we have California, New York, and then Florida. That's three big states, three big population states with bigger population, with 2.6 million federal direct student loan borrowers that have outstanding balance at the moment. So they're currently borrowing. And that's a volume of 100 billion in outstanding federal loan as well. So it's a good numbers to understand the need for financial aid in general. So at the moment, we have just a little bit over 600,000 borrowers in Florida that are enrolled into the income-driven repayment. This is all being re-evaluated by the federal government when it comes to having borrowers repay. They just recently had a webinar explaining how to have students go back to repayment since we had the pause during the pandemic. So that was very interesting. In any case, if you really are interested into anything policy and advocacy, obviously, if you're joining, join at NACAC Wonk. My director, David Hawkins, is the one monitoring this, and he sends a bunch of different tweets and very, very current. But if you have any questions, let me know. We're probably going to be at the end, but anything else, Iris?
Thank you. No, thank you so much. This is the time. I'm gonna go ahead and remind everyone, if you have any questions about anything that Tiziana has covered today, feel free to enter them. And my apologies, the announcement here. Feel free to enter them in the Q&A, and then we'll direct them towards the end. Right now, we are very excited to have you here also from Mr. Pete Hernandez, Director of Outreach Services, 20 plus years experience in financial aid. You could contact him for any questions or concerns that you may have. Mr. Hernandez, go ahead. The floor is yours. You could go ahead and share your screen, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. We are going to be doing a presentation this morning specifically on Bright Futures and everything that's associated with the Bright Futures presentation. Let me just oh, wait a minute. Not that one. Oh, excuse me just a second. I do apologize for
Not a problem, Mr. Hernandez. I do see a question appeared in the panel for Q&A.
Okay.
If you want a couple more minutes, we can definitely address this question. I think it was directed to Tiziana. We have a panelist asking for Federico Glitman. Sorry if I missed this, but was there talk about doubling the Pell Grant? Are there any updates? How can we help advocate? Tiziana, are you able to speak upon that a little bit?
Yes, I was trying to find my unmute button. Yes, so last year, and this was that was a big thing to doubling the Pell. So right now the Pell for the year is, if I'm not mistaken, like 6,400. Pedro, you tell me if you know better on those numbers. But they are trying to double it to 13,000 to restore the purchasing power for low and moderate income students struggling to really meet the cost of college. At the moment, and the latest that I've seen is that there is, we have put a letter joining NASFA as well to make sure that, to urge and bring any affordable and high quality college education to students. We are waiting to make sure that the Senate is able to vote on the fiscal year 2022, because that is going to be part of the fiscal year. So doubling the Pell, it is a big endeavor. That means that it will go toward. So right now we had the summer Pell, if I'm not mistaken. We had the fall, the spring, the summer, and then we are going to double that. So students will be able to basically get more tuition, more classes out of that, and possibly have more refund coming in to cover housing, to cover, computers if they have to buy books, So that is the big deal. I remember when you had students, the Pell Grant, even though they had full Pell Grant, they were not able to purchase their nursing books, which were expensive. Sometimes that was a big deal. So having that double Pell will definitely help. If you want to follow that, you're more likely to go on the Senate area and find where they have the policy stated and where it's going. We haven't heard much about it yet, but following NASFA and following NACAC is one of the best resources as well to find out where it states.
Thank you, Tiziana. And then we're going to go ahead and continue with the presentation with Mr. Hernandez. I do see your questions in the panel and attendees, and my colleague Iris and I will make sure to address those after Mr. Hernandez's presentation. So without further ado, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, can you guys see my screen at this time?
Yes.
Are you able to see? So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I will quickly review one of the biggest, most well-funded merit-based scholarships in the state of Florida. It is a Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Every question, every concern, and eligible to every student in the state of Florida. So I'll go ahead and begin. My name is Pedro Hernandez, and I am available to answer any question or any concern that the student may have. I will also provide this presentation that not only has the initial eligibility, but also how to actually navigate through the entire presentation, through the entire application, so you understand what students are able to view. So I know we have a limited time, so I'll just quickly go through the presentation and just cover the initial eligibility, which a lot of students, a lot of counselors need to understand. So what are we going to cover today? First and foremost, we're going to cover the home screens, their initial eligibility requirements, evaluation process and notification, and that Florida financial aid application is part of this presentation. But if we don't have time, you'll have it available to you. So when it comes to Bright Futures home screen, we refer all students to our main home webpage, which is Florida Student Financial Aid SG.org. That's Florida Student Financial Aid SG for state grants.org is our main website. If you can see on our main website on the right-hand side, we're going to list all of the state scholarships and grants that were just mentioned. But the more importantly one, the second one down is the Florida Bright Futures link. If one is to click that, it's going to open it up to the actual Bright Future Student Handbook, which has 3 chapters. We are concerned now with chapter 1, initial eligibility. That is where we post and update the most current information on how students can actually qualify for the Bright Future Scholarship. On the same website, at the very center, you're going to see the first-time applicants link. This is where students during their senior year, starting October 1st of their senior year, and all the way up through August 31st of their graduating year, the students can submit their Florida financial aid application, which is a requirement. It is mandated if the students want to receive the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Now, once again, like I have indicated, if you click on the Bright Futures link, you're gonna see the Bright Future Student Handbook. We highly recommend chapter 1. It covers the entirety of what it takes to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. We highly suggest you create a link to this website because we are constantly updating that information, and the most updated information is going to be reflected on our website. If you look at the bottom left-hand side, you're going to see our one-page flyers. If you want a quick access on the Florida Academic, Florida Medallion, Gold Seal, and Gold Seal Cape Scholarships, you can actually click on those. It is a one-page brief instruction on how to actually provide to the students in a more synopsis, in a more concise one-page informational sheet. On the right-hand side, we have additional resources. We have the Bright Futures course table, which both parents, students, counselors can look at and see if the courses that they are taking do qualify for the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. This tool and this resource is available to everyone. So once again, all this is once you click on the Bright Futures tab on the right-hand side. Now, Bright Futures initial eligibility requirements. Students must meet certain requirements to qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. And those requirements are as follows. First and foremost, be a Florida resident and a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen to be determined by the student's post-secondary education to receive actual funding. The student has to complete their Florida financial aid application once again after October 1st, but no later than August 31st of their graduation year. So say, for example, a 21-22 high school senior right now, their application is currently open because it opened October 1st of 2021, and their last day to submit it is August 31st of 2022. But we encourage, like everything else, to make students try to submit this application as soon as possible. And because it has the same opening date as a FAFSA, we highly recommend that as well. And then they have to earn a standard high school diploma or its equivalent from a Florida high school or a registered private institution. Now, at this time, let me make sure I go back to point number one. In order to receive actual funding, the student has to be a Florida resident or a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. However, if students at this time, a high school student in the state of Florida is not a US resident, a US citizen or a Florida resident, they can still submit this application, the Florida financial aid application, even if they don't have a social security number. The application will assign them a pseudo number if they don't want to submit one. The student can use their Florida student identification number. But the fact is that we recommend that every Florida high school senior submit this application. They will then be qualified for the next 5 years if they meet all the requirements, including the submission of this application. If at any time the student becomes eligible by gaining Florida residency, US citizenship, or US or eligible non-citizenship, the student can then regain eligibility of their Bright Future Scholarship for the remainder of that 5-year period, depending on when the student regained either the US citizenship, Florida residency, or an eligible non-citizen. Vitally important to understand that we want every Florida high school senior to submit that application in case they qualify later, if they don't not qualify now, based on those specific requirements. Now, once again, other requirements are they cannot be found guilty or pleaded to a felony charge. They have to be accepted and enrolled for at least half-time at a Florida institution, and once again, within a 5-year period. They have to enroll once again in at least 6 credit hours of non-remedial study towards their associate degree or their degree of choice. Now, there are multiple levels of the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, but every student will just qualify and receive funding for on one level. So if Florida is a Florida Academic Scholar, Florida Medallion, GOCIO, or GOCIO Cape, that is the actual funding that they're going to receive if that funding does correspond with the actual degree that they are enrolled at. Traditionally, for academic students, they have to qualify for the Florida Academic and Florida Medallion. That is automatically for those students who are enrolled in an AS program, baccalaureate programs, 4-year college programs. The GOCIO Cape and the GOCIO Vocational Scholarship Program is more geared for those students who are graduate from high school and enroll in a vocational program. If the difference between the two is if the student qualifies under the Cape curriculum, the student can earn their certificate program. Then if it progresses onto their AAS program or an AS degree, the student can then receive an additional 60 credit hours towards the baccalaureate degree. Whereas the GOCIO vocational scholars, the students, by meeting those requirements, once they enroll in a vocational program, a diploma program, a certificate program, once they reach that diploma or that certificate program or an AAS program, that is the end of their funding at that time. That is the main difference between those two, the funding difference between the CAPE and the GOCIO vocational scholarship. There are qualifying differences as well, but we want to make sure that any counselor, students, parents understand those differences. Now, there are testing requirements and overall requirements. So when it comes to the Florida Bright Futures academic and medallion scholars, normally traditional students qualify by meeting all of the following. They have to have 4 English credits, 4 mathematics credits, 3 social science, 3 biological science, and 2 consecutive world languages. Now, this is important. All of these are specifically geared for the Bright Futures student. When it comes to their GPA, the second requirement, this GPA is solely based on those classes, those 16 core classes that we take into consideration. So if the student has a 3.5 or higher weighted GPA in those classes, the student can qualify for the Florida Academic Scholar. If the student has a 3.0 or higher, the student can qualify for a medallion scholarship. That if, once again, they reach the third requirement, which is testing requirement. For Bright Futures purposes, the student still has to have testing requirements. Now, we at the Florida Department of Education, we super score the students' test scores. However, it is vitally important to understand that we need every sitting of the test that the student takes. Now, there are certain agencies such as SAT, ACT that are now providing a super score. We do not take that super score into consideration. in order for us at the Florida Department of Education to super score the test, we need to have every sitting or every test that the student has taken sent to us. And then we'll take the best subcomponent score of each individual test and we super score them. We give them the best overall composite score. We also have, of course, community service hours or hours. For the Florida academic student, the student has to have 100 community service hours documented and approved by the high school guidance counselor or the school district if the student is homeschooled. For the Florida medallion, 75 hours. Now, all schools are required to provide an actual Bright Futures GPA as opposed to their overall GPA because it makes a significant difference. The Bright Futures GPA is different and it's calculated differently because it's based on those 16 core classes as opposed to their overall GPA that takes electives and other classes into consideration. Now, the grade point average. When it comes to Bright Futures, we actually have a weighted GPA that we take into consideration. So if the student is in honors class, dual enrollment, AP, pre-IB, IB, pre-ACE, and ACE, those courses, if they're weighted, they count towards the student, and we take those actual weighted GPAs into consideration. So if the student, as long as the student earns a 3.5 GPA or higher in those classes, the student qualifies for 3.0 or higher, qualifies for the Florida medallion. Now, in addition to that, the college entrance exam, we base them on legislative requirements that we have. The scores that we listed, oh, let me go back. Did we cover the scores specifically? When it comes to the scores, and these scores are listed on both our Florida Bright Future Student Handbook and the one-page requirements. We have listed both the qualifying scores for this year's seniors and next year's seniors, which is this year's juniors. We have those scores out there. For the Florida academic student, the student has to obtain either a 29 ACT composite or a 1330 SAT. For the Florida medallion, that is a 25 ACT or a 1210 SAT composite. In order for next year's seniors, those numbers remain the same, and you could have those seniors aim for those test scores, once again, for those high school juniors to make sure that they are qualifying for the Bright Futures Scholarship. Yes, we do still require test scores for Bright Futures purposes. Now, with that in mind, college entrance exams, vitally, vitally important. We need, and how we receive those test scores is by having your students send, once again, every one of their test dates that they have to one of the 11 public state universities. Even if your students are going to a state college, to a private institution, the student has to send those to, we highly recommend, to their most local public state university. We have 12 state public universities in the state of Florida, with the exception of Florida Polytechnical University. If the students are going there, have them send in either to FIU, FAU, once again, one of the public state universities. And those would be, once again, University of West Florida, Florida State, Florida A&M, University of North Florida, University of Central Florida, University of Florida, USF, FIU, FAU, and Florida Southwestern State University, and Florida New College. Send those test scores. Your students must send those test scores to those institutions in order for us to receive them and to evaluate the student, both based on and for Florida Bright Futures purposes. We are going to receive the transcript that the student sends or the district sends on behalf of the school, whether it's a public school, private school, charter school, or homeschool. We will match it up to the test score that the student has sent to one of the state universities and their Florida financial aid application. We take all of those into consideration. We take them up, we match them up, and that's how we do their evaluation. Service hours. When it comes to service hours, it needs to be on the student's transcript. That transcript can come directly from the high school. If the student is in a traditional public high school, a charter school, or private school, we receive those service hours on the high school transcript. Now, if the student is homeschooled, the student has to be registered with their school district for the last 2 years, their junior and senior year, and they will provide those are service hours to the district homeschool liaison, and they will send those hours on behalf of the student. Now, there are other ways to qualify. If, for example, the student is a National Merit Scholar or finalist, National Hispanic Scholar, an ACE diploma recipient, or an IB diploma recipient, that automatically excludes them from having to have qualifying test scores. They still have to have service hours and as part of their curriculum to qualify for Bright Futures. However, if the student is in an ACE program and an IB program, but fails to get an actual diploma in either the ACE program or the IB program, they still do have to have qualifying test scores. Only if the student received an actual diploma are they exempt from having qualified test scores. Just want to absolutely make sure, because we get a lot of students that tell us and call us and say, oh no, I was in the IB program. That necessarily does not mean that they have an IB or an ACE diploma. It means that they were in the program, but they still have to have the qualifying test scores. There's a significant difference in those students. Now, when it comes to CAPE, once again, in order to earn for the Gold Seal CAPE, and these are, once again, students who are going into vocational studies, in order to earn the CAPE, all they have to earn is 5 post-secondary credits through CAPE certified certificates, which articulate to a credit. They don't have to be in the same program. They just have to be 5 post-secondary credits and 30 community service hours, and that qualifies them for the Gold Seal CAPE, along with the actual application. So they don't have to have any other of the other requirements, any other GPA requirements. In order to qualify for CAPE, they just have to have 5 post-secondary credit hours through CAPE certifications and 30 community service hours. For the Gold Seal CAPE, for the Gold Seal, once again, it's gonna award the students when they enroll for a certificate program, diploma program, all the way up to their AAS program, and they're gonna receive an additional 60 hours towards their baccalaureate degree or an applied science degree program. It gives that student the ability to actually go from a certificate program all the way up to a baccalaureate program through the Bright Futures funding. Now, when it comes to Gold Seal, what are those requirements? When it comes to Gold Seal, the student has to achieve the minimum GPA requirement listed, take at least 3 full credits in a single career or technical educational program, have a weighted GPA of a 3.5 in those, specifically in those classes, and achieve the actual SAT, ACT, or PERT exams. Those PERT exams, if they are still taken at your institution, you can transmit those from the high school district. They are part of the actual transcript. Those PERT exams are, that's how we receive those. So unlike the SAT or ACT, those students, which are once again in technical programs or going to a state college or going to a private institution, still have to send all of those test scores to one of the 11 state universities for us to receive them and to pick them up if they want to qualify for Florida Bright Scholarship. Once again, we have provided you all of the minimum test score requirements when it comes to the Gold Seal requirements, whether SAT, ACT, or PERT exams. We have provided that information here. It's also part of the student handbook. It gets updated on a yearly basis if it does indeed change. Now, the vocational skills scholarships, once again, can be applied towards applied technology diploma, technical degree education, or career education certificate programs. These are strictly more towards your vocational students. Now, how do we evaluate the Bright Futures process and the award application process? There are 2 evaluation periods, and once again, the transcript should be submitted to us at the end of each semester. So early evaluation, that means when the students normally go through fall, when it's August through December, they have all their coursework, they have everything done, and we're taking hours all the way up to January 31st. Even if we have mid-year graduates, if they graduate, they can become Bright Futures eligible funding for the following spring semester or for the summer. So we have all of this information available. If your students are still in high school though, and they are 7th semester early evaluation, and they receive the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship, they cannot lose it even if they carried senioritis during their last or 8th semester or last period. So as long as they graduate, they have earned that diploma. Now, we always advise them, be very careful because you earn your Bright Futures Scholarship. But when it comes to academics, to the admission side, a lot of colleges, universities are looking at that final semester to make sure you are still academically viable, because they can and will rescind your admissions paper, your admissions into that college or university if you do not academically succeed during that 8th semester. So there is a difference between Bright Futures and on the academic side. Final evaluation, once again, is at the end of the 8th semester or sometime in May or June when your school, when you provide your final transcript. That final transcript is going to have their graduation date and all of the other courses that they take in, their final GPAs, all the way up through high school graduation. That it's going to have additional service hours that they have done all the way up through however the district has set it up. The districts and the counselors at each individual high school or school district in the state of Florida set those standards. So make sure that students understand that community service hours or service hours are part of the transcript, and they should check for approval and for submission through the actual high school district, the high school itself, and they should be actually approved, and they cannot appeal to us. That decision is made at the actual school level. Now, these notifications, it is very important that when the student goes online, signs up, and submits their Florida financial aid application, their required application for Bright Futures, they are going to be evaluated, and it's going to be actually, their information is going to be posted. Even though counselors have information that tells the student that they are eligible for Bright Futures, the student is not going to receive that final certification or notification until after high school graduation, because high school graduation is part of the actual Bright Futures requirement to receive it and to receive the final notification. So a lot of counselors are going to be able to tell the student, yes, you are Bright Futures eligible, you have met all the requirements. But when the student signs up, they won't be able to see that notification until the student actually graduates. But its ultimate responsibility is with the student, with the parents, to make sure that the students' parents are taking all the classes, meeting all the requirements by the set dates, for community service hours, test scores, and all of this information. Now, vitally important when it comes to those students who are receiving IB or ACE diplomas, we receive the final listing of those students who are receiving IB or ACE diplomas sometimes in early or late July and possibly into August. We will still certify those students, reevaluate those students who have an IB or an ACE diploma. If that is what's qualifying the student, we will then award those students and notify those students in late July or late August. And that means that student could already be in college or at a university, but they have not been notified through the final evaluation. It's up to the student to notify that institution and make arrangements to make sure that they are not dropped from a college or university because we have not received the Bright Futures notification as of yet. Once again, that's for IB and ACE diplomas. They will receive it at a later date. Now, what does the Bright Futures Scholarship cover at the present time? At the present time, the scholarship is covering, at the Florida academic level, it is covering 100% of tuition and applicable fees. The Florida Medallion Scholar is covering 75% of tuition and applicable fees at a state college or at a state university. Now, it is covering the equivalent dollar amount at a private institution in the state of Florida. Now, can the Bright Future Scholarship travel out of state? It cannot. Unfortunately, the Bright Future Scholarship cannot travel out of state. But one of the important changes that has been made is that if the student is receiving either a Florida Academic or Florida Medallion Scholar, if they enroll in one of the 28 state scholars, in one of the 28 state colleges or community colleges, they are receiving 100% of tuition and applicable fees towards a degree all the way up through their AA or AS degrees. Once those students who are Florida Medallion and leave or enroll in their baccalaureate program, once receiving their associate's degree, they will transition back to 75% of tuition and fees. But as of this moment, those students who are pursuing an associate's degree at one of the 28 state colleges are receiving 100% of tuition and applicable fees. Now we have all of this information once again on our Bright Future Student Handbook. We have the renewal information available on Chapter 2 of the Student Handbook. We have all of the information on Goal Seal Vocational Scholarships. And we have, as part of this presentation, the actual financial aid application, what it looks like so you can see your students. But because we have limited time, I just wanted to answer any question or concern that you may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hernandez. I do have two questions here. Let's see. The first one being, there was conversation about changing the E's. Let's see if maybe you or Tiziana could answer this one. About the conversation was about the E's requirements due to the major. Is this something that small private institutions should be concerned about?
Like every legislative session, the actual legislators go in and could change different criteria for the awarding of the Bright Future Scholarship. At this time, because we are only administrators of the program, we do not know what the legislation could bring. But at this time, this is what we are telling high school seniors, this is what they do. At this time, Bright Futures qualifies for any and all degrees at an institution.
Perfect.
And it will it is currently funding them up to 120 credit hours, which is also vitally important because if the student goes in and they already have either dual enrollment or have already achieved credits, Bright Futures is still going to fund them 120 credit hours up to their baccalaureate degree. But if the student reaches that and has already saved 30, 60 hours of credit through dual enrollment or AP classes, if the student goes on to graduate school, the Bright Future Scholarship can be utilized to pay for their first semester of graduate studies at the undergraduate level. If, once again, they have funding still within 120 credit hours and they are still within their 5 years after high school graduation.
That's definitely great. Now, regarding requirements, is the, because you cover the SAT, GPAs, and credits and whatnot, is the pandemic being factored in when considering and reviewing for Bright Futures?
The thing, when it comes to the pandemic, we had emergency order 0202 that only gave the students the ability to test. Normal test dates are the student, for example, a 2021 high school graduate would normally have until June 30th to submit all their qualifying test scores. Just like a 22 high school graduate right now has until June 30th to submit test scores, even though that's past high school graduation. But last year, that was extended all the way up through December 1st. So any student who still needed to have a qualifying test score submitted, they could test all the way through December 1st to submit it. As of this date, as of today, there has not been any changes in regards to any additional extensions for the 22 high school senior graduating class. So those students have to meet all the requirements as stated, that the ones that we went over on our Bright Future Student Handbook, on our curriculum, that the student still has to meet all those requirements as of today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hernandez. I am actually going in the chat for everyone at the entering the Bright Futures landing page where you can find all the chapters that he's been referring to, as well as the main homepage for the Florida Student Scholarship Grant Program. Again, thank you so much for your time. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my co-chair, Rose, so that she could introduce our last speaker for today. Rose?
Thank you so much, Iris. So give me just one moment while I share my screen. I'm excited to bring with you today my colleagues, Mr. Aaron Johnson, a colleague at the School of Pharmacy. Back in my former days, he has a wonderful program and scholarship, which I'm excited for him to share with you about, and his further colleague, Ms. Emily Morris. So just give me 1 second as I pull up his slide. Okay, Aaron, with all further ado, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you for having us today. And I'm actually gonna let Emily share her screen so we can go through the PowerPoint presentation relatively quickly. I tend to talk fast, so I think we'll get through it pretty quickly. I'll just give Emily a second to do that. Awesome. All right. So, I've actually learned a lot from this presentation, and I think that's, really important because like Rose said, I'm a 4th-year Doctor of Pharmacy candidate at Nova. So I graduate hopefully in May. And, I personally have benefited from a lot of scholarships. I'm from South Florida, so I got the Bright Future Scholarship. I had a lot of different opportunities that allowed me to get here. And so all of the work that you all have done, Ms. Marchante and Mr. Hernandez has allowed me to be here to give back. So first, I just wanted to say thank you for that. Emily, I don't know if it's just me, but I don't really see the screen. I'm gonna let you maybe figure that out. I don't really see it.
Can everybody else not see it, or? Let me see.
No, but I can share the screen if you like.
Okay, yeah, that works too.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. I'll just let you know when we want to move on to the next slide. So, the scholarship is for graduating high school seniors that are underrepresented. Underrepresented can mean a lot of different things, right? It could be ethnic minorities, religious minorities, disabilities, things of that nature. And as mentioned previously, the median Florida household income is around 60K, which I think is a bit generous. But with inflation and prices, you can understand the urge to educate students on these matters. And so where we feel like our organization fills in the gap is that we feel like we're the liaison between you all and the students, right? Yes, we do offer the scholarship awards for high school seniors, but also what we do, and a big part of what we do, is educate the students. So if you can go to the next slide. So this is just a scholarship team. Our team is made up of all students. So Emily Norris is a student at Syracuse. Yu King is a student at University of California, Berkeley, and Christy is a student at University of Central Florida. And like I said earlier, what we're trying to do is educate students. We don't only offer scholarships, but we teach them, how does financial aid work? What are the different types of what is FAFSA? What is this federal aid? Is this state aid? Is it institutional? Things of that nature. We're teaching them, how do you determine what their financial need is? And so we feel that hearing that from other students is a lot. The impact it hits different, if you want to put it that way, right? It's kind of like when your parents tell you something, your friend can tell you the same exact thing, but since they're close in age and things of that nature, they'll probably be more prone to listen. And we found, when we give these presentations to different universities, that the impact it works really well. And so now that they have this background, then they work with us and teach at other universities the things that we learned and the things that other students need to hear so that they can be the advocates. I know you all do a lot of advocacy, and that's great, but we need to be advocates for ourselves, especially the students. And we feel like that is where we come in. And so, for example, we have a presentation with the LSU Students and Philanthropy Organization. And so now we have some student assistants that are going to help us with that. And now we're going to spread the word of, how does this work? How are we putting ourselves in position to make sure that we can make the decisions for futures? You also spoke on equity and being how that's kind of a hot button issue. And it is. One of the things we're working on is trying to do research on who can and can't get access and why do these disparities exist. And so we're trying to get some students and some foundations on board with that. We're really just trying to understand why these things are here. We teach about the social determinants of health and things of that nature and how it aligns with everything. So it's not just a scholarship. We're really big on educating and advocacy. You can go to the next slide. And just in terms of the scholarship specifically, life is all about opportunities. And so we want everybody to have that equal access. So we've only been doing this for honestly like 8 months, and the partners we've made and the impact that we've had has been phenomenal. And just being able to be a student and still do that is amazing. So I'll hand it over to Emily. And next slide.
So I just want to kind of focus in on the students that we're trying to target. And to be honest, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is kind of continuing actually what our first presenter, Tiziana, was talking about in terms of need. So looking at first generation students, we actually see an interesting intersection of first gen and race in the United States. And just for your information, these statistics are going to come from the National Center for Education Statistics, unless I say otherwise. So when you look at, when you break it down by race, 42% of Black students and 48% of Hispanic students were first generation students, okay? That's a big difference when you look at it compared to white students, which was 28%, right? And then speaking about the family median income, so the median in Florida was 60K, while for first generation freshmen at both 2-year and 4-year institutions, it was, let's be generous and say 40,000. So that's a 20K, difference, and speaks to different family resources, right? And then according to a 2008 Pell Institute study, the mean amount of unmet financial need for low income first gen students was nearly $6,000 before loans. And so this means that this group is going to be taking out more loans, they're going to owe more, and they're also going to work more. And this has, negative consequences for college completion. Anyone who's had to work during college, I worked throughout my undergraduate career, I'll probably work throughout my graduate career as well. It makes it harder. There's no way around it. You can click through the next slide. So this isn't a super important slide, but basically this chart just shows the percentage of all white students who went to college and the percentage that took out student loans. So basically this chart just shows that everyone's taking out loans these days, but Black and Pacific Islanders are actually taking out the most. You can click through the next slide. And so this bill, I'm sure most of you guys on this call are pretty familiar, being financial aid professionals, so you guys see the bill. This is actually my brother's bill. He goes to Emerson College, and so this is just kind of an item breakdown. When we present to students or potential donors, we just like to show this because the cost of college has risen significantly in the last 20 years. So ProPublica found that the average cost of in-state tuition and fees for public colleges in the United States increased by 80% from 2000 to 2014. So we're seeing a massive growth in what it costs. And we just like to include this for context, but I'm sure everyone here is aware that, college is getting quite expensive. You can click through the next one. And so I know there are questions for our last presenter about the effects of the pandemic. And we were looking at, again, National Center for Education Statistics looked at the impact of coronavirus pandemic on college attending people. And there is definitely a big impact. So this first bullet just basically says that certain groups that were planning to take classes in the fall of 2020 had increased cancellations. So the percentage was highest for Black, 37% of adults who were planning to take a class ended up canceling it. And then Hispanic adults, 34%. So, I mean, it's not insignificant across racial lines, but, 37 for the Black demographic, and then only 29 for white, that's not necessarily an insignificant difference. So basically, this is just showing that the pandemic has really threw a wrench in a lot of people's plans who are maybe attending to play in college. They decided to wait, hold back, maybe work a year, or maybe something happened to the family because of the pandemic financially, they can afford to attend. And then looking at this also by, income, if you're looking at the percentage of adults who had reported canceling classes, it was generally higher for those who had lower household incomes. I think part of this was due to wanting to work instead of attending online classes, like kind of wanting to make sure you get the in-person college experience. But I do definitely think the pandemic really affected a lot of people and kind of forced a lot of young adults to, instead of going to college, enter the workforce. And I think you can click the next one. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll take over here. So, the scholarship is for high school seniors in Broward County. So we're going to give out 2 awards, each worth $2,500. But like I said, for us, of course, giving back to the students, giving them, the extra financial incentive is great. But also, we really are trying to expand our team because we don't want to just give money back. We want to develop professionals and make sure that they are, know what's going on in the financial aid world. So I'll leave my email in the chat because we are looking for whether it's high school seniors or undergraduate students to come join our team because we do a lot of professional development things, learning about the different nuances of the financial aid world. And, you know, obviously that comes with networking opportunities and things of that nature. So if you all know of anybody that you think would be a good fit, we would love to have them. So does anybody have any questions? All righty, well, thank you so much.
Oh, Erin, thank you so much. And Emily, thank you so much. I really want to take, be mindful of everybody's time. A lot of, thank you all for sharing your expertise. A lot of information was shared with everyone today on such important topics, right? Again, thank you. Like I said, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for our last session on the school profile. And please remember to complete the feedback survey. I will be adding right there the link to the chat right there. My colleague Rose just added it. Lastly, if you're not a member of SACAC or AAUW, be sure to join and be a part of the change that we want to see in the future. So with that, I hope you all have a great Thursday, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you all. See you tomorrow.